I feel very honoured to be here today. Um, and one of the scary things about being asked to speak today was I was just given a free choice of what I spoke about. And I don't know about you, but that's actually quite daunting. You think, well, gosh, anything values-based I can talk about. And then I started to think about, as Neil introduced me there, about the connections. So basically, why connections? Um, well, thinking about it, all through my teaching career, um, I noticed that actually it's connecting with people is at the core of every school. There are different levels of connections. There are the personal connections, those one-to-one moments. Sometimes they can seem quite trivial, connecting with the bus driver when he drops the children off. Just that little remark, but it can set the scene for the day. Connecting with the children as they come in, speaking to parents as they come in at the gate. When we do a visit to a school to look at for values-based accreditation, we always go with the staff or the head teacher to meet parents and get a feel for those relationships. And that's what connections are all about. It's those authentic relationships. There are the connections within the school, and then growing out to the community and global connections. So that's really the theme for my talk tonight. I want to share the ways in which connection can become powerful. That's why I wanted to call it the power of connection. I just want to talk about the two photos here. The top photo, I hope you can see it and make out what it is. Basically, this is my Key Stage 1 class at Galway Primary School. And we're connecting with nature. We're actually lying under the cherry blossom tree and waiting for the petals to fall on us. It's just one of those lovely moments that really meant a lot. As you can see, I'm actually there with them, and you could see on some of the children's faces the joy of that moment. And some people will say, well, have you got time to do that? Well, it's playtime. It's just a few minutes. It's teaching the children that they can be quiet and reflect and be in nature. And then when I became head teacher at that school, I made a very, very important connection, because the newly appointed LA Senior Advisor for Primary Education was a lady called Bridget Knight. And I met her, and she introduced myself and many other head teachers to something that she had been practicing in Oxfordshire under the leadership of a certain Dr. Neil Hawkes, and that was values-based education. And of course, we very quickly adopted that at Galway, and then a few years later, I moved on to become head at Clihonga, and the picture below is an assembly at Clihonga where we're celebrating family values, where those values-based connections are actually strengthened by working with families and getting families doing values-based activities at home. Yet another way of connecting. So moving on, the other thing that actually inspired me to want to speak about connections was an article that I read about something called the Wood Wide Web. I don't know if anyone else has heard about the Wood Wide Web. It's quite hard to say as well. I'm often humbled by nature, and reading this, we've all heard of the mycelium, where all those little interconnecting pathways between various species of fungi. Apparently, according to a lady called Suzanne Simard, the trees are also connected. Trees in the forest connect and send signals and can actually share nutrients to help each other out. And making connections like that, I also thought, well, that's how we learn, isn't it? That's how the children learn. The most powerful learning is when it's connected to something real, to relevance, or connected to another idea, built on something. So that further introduced this idea of connection. And then the very next week, we had our values-based education conference. And this was another wonderful opportunity. And because I'd already begun to reflect on connections, this became even more important to me. They came into a sharper focus. At the conference, there were the connections with people I know and love and rarely see face to face. So that was a physical and palpable connection. But then there were lots of new connections with like-minded people. So many people together in one place who all believe in the power of values-based living and values-based learning. It's amazing. And one of the people that I connected with there, well, two actually, are called Two-Thirds Design. And in this photo, you can see me talking to, with Neil, talking to Jill and Sarah. And the way that they present visual images through a mind mapping technique reminded me, again, it connected with the mind maps that I used to use with children in classrooms. And thinking about it, that was probably about 20 years ago. That's a long time. So that was another connection. And then Neil told us the story of how he met a man called Gavin McCormack at a conference in Australia. And I will talk a little bit more about Gavin, but it was just a chance meeting at a conference which led on to Gavin writing a course for his up school all about values-based education, and that has grown even more. And then another connection through the conference, I met a lady called Chris Malone. Now Chris also became connected with values-based education when she volunteered at Erdsley School in Herefordshire and met Bridget Knight, who was the head teacher there. She was so impressed with VbE that she's now working with us to develop an early years accreditation, and that in turn has led to her beginning a doctorate focusing on early years values-based education. So connection, 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 it just goes on. And it all begins with the personal connections. My personal connections with nature are important to me. And that begins with the dog walking every single day, getting out there. And it's just so good for my mental health, but also it gives me a chance to reflect, to think things through. And then another connection, Gavin at the conference spoke to us about our life expectancy. If you live to 85, you have 1,000 months to be alive. And that apparently is the sort of average life expectancy. And if you think about how quickly a month goes by, that really isn't a lot, and it is a bit of a wake-up call. Life is very precious. I recently My husband was diagnosed with cancer. Thankfully, he's now completely clear. But we went through quite a difficult time, a challenging time. And we know that every moment is precious. And these connections improve the quality of that precious life. And then finally, again from the conference, again, a personal connection. This is Neil speaking. And of course, Neil always speaks from his heart and to your heart. That's one of his real skills. He can touch people with his words. But behind him, as a backdrop on the screen there's a photograph of Herefordshire from close to Bridget's home. And that particular conference this year was really quite sad for us because Bridget was ill at the last minute and wasn't able to be there. And she's such a key person to our team. We're a very small team at VbE, and Bridget is our CEO. And that photograph just brought her into the room. It made that special connection. It meant something to us all. And thanks for Nigel for actually taking that photo and making that happen. And finally here, this is one of those mind map sketches produced by Jill Slasser from Two Thirds Design. And it's a lovely visual image of how values-based education works and how it's all connected. So it starts in school. I don't need to read it to you, but if I just take you, follow the circle round. It's I think it's just such a powerful image, this mind mapping thing. I wish I had the skills to make mine all artistic like that, but
that's what it is.
So moving on, how did Gavin connect? Gavin's a fascinating person. He started Upschool. When Neil first told us about this, I didn't really understand it, I have to confess. Upschool, as it says here, is changing the world through purposeful education. Gavin is a teacher with many years' experience, a trained Montessori practitioner, and he started Upschool in order to provide free courses and resources for teachers all over the world. And he has hundreds of thousands of students doing his courses and using his materials. All the courses are free, and one of those courses is all about values-based living and learning. And then making even more of a connection, because he is reaching so far with these, he has now started a platform for student voice called Dear World. And this is an opportunity for students to share the work they produce from Gavin's courses, and particularly on sustainability and values-based living and learning, and to actually publish that on the internet for others to read and see. And these children are taking a great pride in that. I shouldn't say children, they're students. Here are students from Delhi Public School, and they are planting a forest. And I just want to read to you the words of the student who published this on Dear World. Right next to our school, there used to be this empty, dusty piece of land. Nothing grew there. It was just dirt and rocks. And in the hot sun, it felt like an oven. But then we had an idea. Why not turn it into a forest? Through the Upschool Be the Change course, we learned that small actions can lead to big changes. So we got to work. We dug holes, planted saplings, and watered them every day. We imagined birds building nests, butterflies fluttering, and trees growing tall enough to give us shade. It was hard, But we didn't give up. It wasn't easy. The sun was hot, the ground was dry, and at first it felt like nothing was happening. But we didn't give up. And slowly, green started to appear. One day this place will be full of trees. The air will be cleaner. The soil will be healthier. The animals will come back. And it will be because a group of kids decided to do something. We're not just planting trees, we're planting the future. And I think that's amazing. School connections. So we're moving out a little bit, but I mean, as you see, the personal connections, that one-on-one connection from Gavin to Neil and back, then grew and has spread values-based education to hundreds of thousands. I'm not going to read what Andrew's put there, but I think it says everything about what we need to do today in education. Values-based education is all about relationships, that authentic connection, the smile that reaches the eyes. Every child knowing that they matter, they are important. I recently saw an interview with Charlie Mackesy, who wrote The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. That might be the wrong order, but it's close. And he tells a story about a teacher in Parents' Evening. And this teacher had a parent come up to him with the child, and the parent said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And he said, "I'm not sure. What's your name again?" She mentioned her name, and he said, "Oh, yes, I do, yes." And that parent told him that he had made a real difference in her life, because she had gone to school one day so depressed and feeling so worthless that she had decided she was going to end her life. But she went into school to say goodbye to people, not that they would know that. And she said this teacher was the last teacher of the day, the last lesson of the day, and it was an art lesson, and she was drawing and feeling very low. And he walked past her and just said, "Oh, well done. That's beautiful. Don't give up." And she said those words touched her. And she decided to carry on. And so she said to the teacher, "Well, without you, I wouldn't be here." And that's what real connection does. You see why I say it's powerful now. School connections. One of our colleagues, VbE advisor Emma Rossiter, speaks passionately about relational inclusion and how important it is that students are seen and appreciated and listened to. They are not their behaviour. If we take time to develop relationships and connect with them, then we can help. Just that story from Charlie Mackesy. And these are from one of Emma's posts on LinkedIn, all about belonging. Thankfully, belonging is now figuring in the new Ofsted framework. So we're really pleased to see that. And from the school, of course, values-based schools are outward-facing schools. They don't just concentrate on what's happening within their own school. This quote is from Corrie, who is the CEO at the Pioneer Learning Trust in Luton, her school, Chantry Primary School in Luton, that was the school where she began being head teacher and then became executive head and now is CEO. They understand the need to make a difference. Every year, they take part in the Peace March around Luton. And in this Peace March, they visit 4 different places of worship. And at each place, the pupils show that same value of respect and understanding and empathy. And what a great way to actually demonstrate your values. Another VbE school is Western House Academy in Slough, and they regularly make podcasts. I know, Neil, you'll appreciate this. Very often they're podcasts about music or about their values. They actually played a part in our conference a couple of years ago, a pupil conference. And their students are incredibly confident in the way they broadcast. This week, a link dropped into my email box, and it was by the Sustainability Warriors from Western House Academy. All introduced themselves and all are aged 11. And their project that they were talking about on their podcast is about an SDG project, which is to develop a study space in the school grounds. And I just I was going to try and play it, but I think it might take too long. But we believe that the broadcasters aged 11, and I'm quoting here, "We believe it will help the children's mental and physical well-being." Another one said, "Being outdoors actually helps children feel calm and happier." I think that's a great illustration of how the children, with their ethical vocabulary and their understanding, are able to actually understand the benefits of being in nature, that they understand the impact on their own awareness and on their own ethical and emotional well-being. Then, of course, that web is growing again. We have the global connections. I was lucky enough to work with a school in Chiang Mai in Thailand. Most of our international work is done virtually over the internet, but this school was founded in 2018, and I was so fortunate to be invited to actually go and carry out a training day for the whole staff, because the founders of Meriton British International School were determined that their school was going to have values-based education at its heart. And they've lived with that and they've sustained that. In fact, last year they gained their values-based education accreditation, and they celebrate, they're very good at promoting their values-based education. They have a really good presence on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and they celebrate World Values Day in a really meaningful way every year. And as the school has grown, so that they're now from, I think, from nursery all the way to year 10, it just keeps on growing. And of course, the values are deepening as the children get older. These are the questions that they shared with parents and people from the community. What value do you think Chiang Mai needs most for the future? Which value do you hope that young people will carry with them in the future? generations. I think it's really great the way that they can share their deep thinking with parents and other members of their own community. And here is another school, one of our values-based education schools, another school that actually gained their quality mark recently. This is Light International School in Mombasa, Kenya. The principal there, Ildar, is very forward-thinking, and he actually shared with us a week or so ago an article he wrote for the Times Educational Supplement for their international news section about their tea talks. They began inviting parents to share their stories. Ildar says they're often linked to a monthly theme. For example, during Responsibility Month, a father described his childhood running a family shop in rural Kenya. And in Empathy Month, a mother spoke movingly about arriving in Mombasa as a refugee and how the kindness of strangers shaped her future. It's such a powerful way of showing the students how values affect real lives. And of course, I could not talk about connections without mentioning GAVE. It's only last week that GAVE was launched, and this is giving us a massive opportunity to grow our connections. The aim of the Global Alliance for Values-Based Education is to galvanise a group of like-minded bodies and make our voices heard. If we all register and offer what skills or time we can, perhaps we can amplify the positive difference we all make on a daily basis. And so, I'm nobody special. I've got no celebrity status. I'm just a former head teacher living in a rural village, but I know that by smiling at the person in the village shop, I can improve their day. I know that by thanking strangers or by trying not to make slick judgments, I can improve the world very slightly. And I've been given this fantastic opportunity to speak to you here today. We all make connections. Sometimes they seem trivial, but they all have power. The power to change for the better. Remember that web. Let's make it grow. Our values can give hope to others. Our schools can share those values and support others less fortunate than they are. And that's our way of growing these connections. And finally, of course, we can spread worldwide through the Global Alliance for Values-Based Education. In the words of Gandhi, let us be the change we want to see in the world and send those ripples out. Thank you.